Welcome to the Senior Rehab Podcast.
The podcast for rehab clinicians that want to better serve older adults.
And now, your host, Dustin Jones.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Senior Rehab Podcast. On the show today, we have Lori Crock. Lori is a kettlebell coach, a fitness instructor, an amazing woman, and just a leader in her field. She is involved with Dragon Door, which is a fitness education certification company, and owns her own gym, MoveStrong Kettlebells. Lori has basically taught me everything I know about kettlebells and has just influenced me a ton in how I work with my patients, my home health patients. I'd say she's a top 5 influencer in my life for sure. But she just showed me a lot of things that I use in my own training, but that I can scale with my patients, and has definitely had me think differently about the older adults that I work with. And so I'm really excited for you to meet her, to hear this conversation, because it's going to get you thinking a little bit of how you can work with your older adults. How can you scale some of these more high intensity, functional activities that we see in the fitness world, to the grandma or grandpa that we work with on a daily basis. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get into this interview with my good friend, Lori Crock. Lori Crock, welcome to the Senior Rehab Podcast. Thanks for your time this evening.
Thanks, Dustin. I'm happy to be here.
So I'm going to go ahead and say this. You're probably one of the top 5 influential people in my life, and I'm not lying there.
Oh, man, that's pressure. Pressure.
So I wanted to have you on the show just so people could meet you and just to hear your story and just your perspective on things. But just to set the tone, could you share with people what you got my wife and I for our wedding gift?
Kettlebells, of course. Is there any better?
Is there anything
wedding gift
better?
Except maybe something for the bathroom, like a squatty potty?
Exactly. Yeah, my top 2 presents for our wedding was the family of kettlebells that you got us, which I used this morning, and then the squatty potty, the bamboo squatty potty, which I used this morning as well. Oh, I love it. Okay, well, tell us a little bit about your journey, your fitness journey.
Well, my journey started years ago when I was a swimmer. I was very intense into swimming and made it to the junior national level. And then that was in high school. And then in college, had opportunities to swim and decided not to. So decided I wanted to have a normal life. So I've been recreationally active since that time, all the way through my life until age 49, when I entered the fitness industry full time. So I received my first fitness cert after working professionally as a marketeer with some fitness companies, and was encouraged by fitness companies to get certified to teach. So I thought, well, I'm 49. I better hurry up and do this. So I did. I got certified to teach natural movement first. MoveNat is the name of the certification. And opened a gym at the age of 50. Nice. And I felt like I was really called to do that because I just fell in love with the natural movement and also being active outdoors, which I saw a lot of my peers, sitting behind desks, in professional jobs, not moving, not ever going outside. So I felt that I could be a good role model and hopefully a good coach to help get my age group moving.
Yeah. So tell us about that, the first workshops that you went to, kind of that moment where everything clicked for you.
Well, before I was certified with MoveNat, the Moving Naturally organization, I went to a 1-week camp in West Virginia where we tent camped and learned, in an intensive, in-depth manner how to move naturally, which sounds kind of funny. We should already know how to do that. But it was balancing, lifting, carrying heavy objects, climbing, hiking, swimming. And it really made me realize that in my own life, I was very structured. I wasn't very open to spontaneous activity, and I really wasn't getting outdoors enough. And it just really changed the way I looked at fitness, which had been very structured up till then. So recreationally running, lifting some weights in the gym, but just felt like I was missing this whole movement piece. So that workshop was very profound. So when I got home, that's when I kept in touch with the natural movement folks and then started working with them in a marketing role. And then when they offered the certification, I jumped at it because something inside me kept saying, more people need to know about this. Why don't I know about this? Why don't more people know about this? So that's how I got started in the field of fitness full time.
Okay. And to give people context, as you were opening that gym, that's when I began to stalk you over the internet, basically. So I was, I was in the Eastern Panhandle of West Virginia, and I was a follower of the MoveNet fitness system. And Lori's gym was one of the first gyms, if not the first, I believe, MoveNet specific gym. And my wife and I ended up moving to Columbus, Ohio, where Lori is. And so I randomly emailed her and said I wanted to hang out with her and spend as much time at that gym as possible. And so we started to work together, to coach together. She was mainly coaching me the whole time, just dropping wisdom on me every day, and I loved it. But when you were about I think a year or so into MoveNet Ohio, could you tell us kind of the genesis from there?
Sure. And it wasn't even, I don't think it was even a year in. It was about maybe 6 months after I'd opened the gym. I started using kettlebells a lot for carries, challenging on, balance beams and on logs and carrying them outdoors, overhead, rack positions, suitcase carries, all different variations of carries with the kettlebells. And I was doing some swings and goblet squats and just felt like it was a great complement to all the natural movement work that we were doing. So then I looked into the certification for the Russian kettlebell hardstyle certification, level 1, and I saw the requirements were pretty challenging, and so that intrigued me.
I like it.
And I thought that it would actually help my folks at the gym. You and I were teaching people to move well, but I saw so much benefit for the joints and just overall general posture and strength with the kettlebell. So I felt like it was a perfect fit. Plus, it's something we could take to the park. The gym was located, we were in an 1830s historic district, which was right by a beautiful park. Close enough to take the kettlebells. Many times I carried the kettlebells to the park.
Yes. And that wasn't just a flat walk. That was
downhill, uphill.
Yeah.
One time we actually put them on the back of a UPS truck as we got tired, and a friend of ours delivered them back for us. So
that's awesome.
But so that's how I got interested in the hardstyle Russian kettlebell methods. Okay. And that was my second certification. And then my poor MoveNet clients, my Moving Naturally clients, had to all learn kettlebells from me, whether they wanted to or not. So I still joke around with a couple of them that have been with me now for about 3 or 4 years that they really like. That was kind of funny how we got into kettlebells. You just kind of kept working them into the movement circuits, and then now we're in love with them. So it actually worked out well.
Yeah. Tell us about your gym now.
So MoveStrong Kettlebells, located in Dublin, Ohio, and I offer small group classes where all fitness levels train together, and it's a mix of body weight, kettlebells, calisthenics, TRX, moving naturally. Also, forgot to mention the functional movement screen. That was also in there with the kettlebell certification and MoveNet, and that's been very helpful. Using a lot of I don't even call them correctives, using a lot of the methodology that Lee Burton and Gray Cook have put forth and incorporating that into our daily programming and training.
Okay. What's the age range for the gym members typically?
Most are over 40. I have, ranges from mid-20s to later 60s, but I'd say the majority are over 40. Quite a few over 50 as well.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful thing to be in one of your classes. I I was a member for, I don't remember how long. I'm not a member currently, but I spent a lot of time there. And it's amazing to see someone in their mid-20s is just an absolute animal, just killing it with some kettlebells, be right beside someone in their mid to late 60s, basically doing the same thing. And how, you're able to scale these activities appropriately, even when there's, sometimes a 40-year age gap is just very impressive. And the results that you get, with your members are amazing.
Thank you, Dustin. And a lot of that is the system. I really, truly believe that the system of strength, the RKC, Russian kettlebell certification, has given me the tools to be able to work with all ages and fitness levels.
Yeah. In your head, when you have such a big gap in some of your clientele, say you have someone that is in their mid to late 60s, what accommodations are typical for someone that is in that age range? What are you going to do a little differently?
Well, gosh,
I know it depends, but
it does. It depends on the person, but I would say in general, if we talk about, you want to talk about over 60s? In the 60s. So just being really careful to work with them to develop that proprioception so that they're giving me the feedback. They're starting to listen and learn and feel before something becomes an issue, number one. I can say lighter weights. We're starting with lighter weights, working our way up. I have some extremely strong 60s, so I wouldn't say that they can't ever achieve what the younger folks can achieve, because they do. I mean, I have, a woman who's in her mid 60s, barbell deadlifting 215 pounds. And that's not her end range. I'm sure she'll hit 225 soon.
Yeah.
So it's very individual, just like it is with any, working in physical therapy. It's the same way. But there are issues such as, say, an arthritic toe. I have someone with an arthritic toe, so we have to adjust a little bit so we don't exacerbate that condition. Or a thumb, or a forearm, some past injury, something going on currently, something that might limit the weight or the number of reps, So just adjusting to make sure that we stay out of pain. We're working on mobility all the way through.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more recovery time between sets. Not that we're not doing high intensity. We are, because we need it all the way through into our 80s. If someone's active and healthy and cleared by a physician to exercise, they need to keep doing some intensity to keep that heart pumping. So
definitely,
been doing a lot of research in that area.
That's great. And that's everything that you said is definitely applicable to everyone listening to this podcast, because whether we're starting with lighter weights or accommodating for injuries or lack of range of motion in certain joints or increased rest time, these same principles, even though, your people are swinging, 50 to 100 and some pounds of a kettlebell, those still apply to the patients that we see. This is a very similar message that Dr. Jonathan Sullivan, he's an ER physician that is in the starting strength group. So he teaches some courses, some barbell courses, and it's the same thing that he said on the podcast. And I just love that what you're doing in your gym, what Dr. Sully is doing in his barbell gym up in Michigan, and what I'm doing with my home health patient, it's all the same principles. It's just a matter of scaling it appropriately to that person that you have in front of you.
Right.
But that takes time for sure to get that skill. I'm learning every day for sure.
Me too. You would never stop learning. That's for sure.
What are some of the biggest lessons or struggles you've learned as a coach, and not necessarily from the business side or things like that, but just from coaching people to get stronger and to get better?
I think it's about being patient and helping people progress, being very creative in the ways we help them progress. So, for example, we're not using a lot of high impact. When you use kettlebells, your feet are rooted. So we're not jumping up and down. But there are times where, I've programmed in the opportunity for box jumps or some jumping on the floor or some moving naturally interesting jump techniques. And that's not always something that some of my members want to do, with knee issues or just a little bit of fear, even sometimes. So how do I adapt? And the key thing is they don't want a wimpy exercise. They want to still be challenged. So finding ways to creatively do that. So taking those boxes, setting them at a height that's challenging, loading them up with a kettlebell or two in a suitcase position, rack position, for example. I mean, that's tough to have that mobility to step up and keep control with the kettlebells in hand. So I'm constantly trying to think of new ways to, and that's just one example, to challenge those folks that have a challenge or a desire not to do a certain movement, to still challenge them neurologically, mentally. It's kind of like what Gray Cook says, pushing someone to the edge of their ability. They want to be pushed. They don't want something that's not going to be life-changing in some way to the way they move and lift.
Yeah, that's a good point, especially the people you're working with, because they're paying you directly for
yes,
your
they
services. It's
yes, they are.
It can often be different for like for me, for example. I wouldn't say most of the time. A good bit, patients don't necessarily want me coming in, but more so their family. But yeah, it is a challenge, and especially the classes that you teach. I mean, you got to be on your toes. You got to be quick to adapt. You got to be quick to be able to scale a movement appropriately. And because I've subbed for you several times, it can be stressful, especially at first when you're not used to it. Because for me as a PT, I've got lots of time, to think through, to make changes. But in a class like that, you got to be quick on your toes.
Yeah, it's challenging when they're all fitness levels. So, so you might have 4, 5, 6 people all at different stages doing different movements, which they should be as needed. Yeah. So the other point I want to make was that the one other thing I've learned that's been so surprising is mobility. I mean, mobility, I would say that now the programming that we do is about 50% strength, 50% mobility. I almost don't want to say it out loud because my people don't really know because it's the hardest thing. I sneak it in, between sets and at the beginning in our warm-ups and in our cool down and, like I said, between sets. And as even part of, we did some down dog to tall plank on hands the other day to get the scapula gliding. That's what I wanted them to focus on. So I'm sneaking in some mobility, but it was the hardest part of the set. So finding creative ways, again, being creative in how we use mobility so that it doesn't feel, no offense, like a physical therapy exercise.
That's true though. And I mean, me, that's what I struggle with the most is being consistent with that aspect. I love to swing a kettlebell, but in terms of really focusing on my deficits, that's tough.
And just what to pair, learning what to pair with a swing. It's great to do. We did some swings, we did snatches and get-ups, and then, what are we going to do in between before we start the next round? So something that's related, something that's going to prepare us for the next set of movements to improve our range of motion or mobility or flexibility in some area. So just putting them together so it makes sense.
Yeah. And that's something that we can do as well, just, from the therapist standpoint, coupling exercises. And that's something that I've drawn a lot from your classes, in terms of the different series that you'll do, in terms of different movements that really complement each other, that, I draw a lot of that in how I work with my older adults. So, I mean, it's pretty similar programming to what you're doing in the gym. Granted, it's probably a lot more rest and not as intense as a gym, but try to scale it to that person appropriately.
Right.
I'm curious, what's been your experience with physical therapy other than me?
Well, I haven't had I've been very blessed not to have many injuries. So I haven't, that I know of, had physical therapy on my own body.
Okay.
But my husband has, because he had 3 shoulder surgeries. And that was, of course, before he was training with me. I'm just going to throw that in there.
Throw him under the bus.
So to be perfectly honest, it wasn't a great experience for him because, as you know, after surgery, you're in pain and the physical therapist is going to make you do some work that you might not want to do yet, get that shoulder moving.
Yeah.
But what I think was lacking, at least from his perspective and from what I saw, was that once they got it moving and got him pain-free, that was it. But it felt like there should have been more.
Yes.
I mean, it always felt like he should have learned more about how to care for his shoulder, how to progress beyond, what physical therapy did for him. And, so I guess for both of us, there was a little bit of misunderstanding about the role of physical therapy. And I believe that he would have been happier having more whole body movements too. A lot of it, it's a very isolated movement, and just understanding how the shoulders working together with the hip and the back and posture and some of the other issues that you're not always able to address in physical therapy. Yeah, for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, and that's a common experience, unfortunately, for many reasons. Part of that can be a payer issue in terms of insurance not covering for more visits. But I will say, just in my short experience of it's so easy to just focus in on that shoulder, get the range of motion that you want, get the strength of the isolated muscles that you feel like is desirable. But in reality, you're leaving so much on the table for that person. And especially someone like your husband, who is a very active individual, very competitive, and lifts really heavy things. That he may have been out of pain, but he was not recovered at all, and that is a shame. And that's something that's a very obvious issue for a lot of PTs, but it's helpful to hear it from from that kind of patient perspective, in sense of you seeing that. What was your interaction with PTs like at some of these fitness certifications that you've gone through?
It was very interesting. When I was at the functional movement screen level 2, there were quite a few physical therapists and chiropractors there. And what I was surprised that a lot of them weren't physically active themselves. I guess I just assumed because you were, everybody was.
Yeah.
And they had no experience with kettlebells. So something like the Turkish get-up was a brand new movement for them. And that surprised me. I'm living in my fitness bubble. Yeah. And, you don't know what Turkish get-up. I'm always so surprised how many people don't know about the Turkish get-up, because to me it's so incredible for so many reasons. In fact, I'm planning a program a whole week of Turkish get-up. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Oh
5 days of Turkish get-up and all different variations and combinations of movements. And
that's beautiful.
So I'm planning that out now. So, but they were always so open to learn. It was great. They were just quick learners, just so open to learning, and picked it up very quickly and just eager to incorporate it into the clinic. A lot of them, I remember, went back to their clinics, ready to order kettlebells, talking to management to get kettlebells in there. So
that's awesome.
I think it's happening more and more. I'm seeing the power of it in the clinic.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Just thinking of my experience with school, there's hardly any exposure to kind of this fitness rehab world. Granted, there's a lot to get into PT school, so I don't expect them to be able to cover this niche in terms of getting, this optimal performance. But it can be very interesting. I remember when I first came to the gym, I think you ran an FMS screen on me, and I was going to do an overhead squat, and I just had no idea what I was doing or how I should do it, and it was so bad that you just started laughing, and not to poke fun at you.
Did I?
Well,
really?
Yeah, you did. It didn't hurt my feelings, but it's just interesting because here comes a doctor of physical therapy, someone that you would think knows about squatting, at least an overhead squat. And just how I went about it was just so dysfunctional. And it's not like I performed poorly, but I didn't even know if I was performing poorly, and which is the scary part. But that can be common in our field in PT in terms of just some of the basics of squatting, of deadlifting, Turkish get-ups, just all these things that are kind of second nature for you. We aren't exposed to that necessarily, which is a shame, but that is changing very quickly, because I feel like that line between, fitness and rehab is blurring a little more, which is good. Yes. So I'm excited. But a lot of people have to go out of their way to learn this stuff for sure, because they're not necessarily gonna see it in PT school.
And even fitness professionals, I see people at certs that haven't had the benefit of, a lot of great mentoring to learn the techniques and to find these incredible certifications that are going to really make you stand out in your field and give you more knowledge to be able to help people to another level. So I feel like the perfect certification would be a little mini physical therapy for a fitness professional, have some physical therapy like training, incorporated anatomy, and then a lot of these physical certifications. And as you know, I'm obsessed with the physical certifications.
Yes.
I'm at a point where, I love to read and research and study, but I don't want to go back to school. So if I could go back to school, I would go back and get a degree at something related to physical therapy or chiropractic, but I'm not going to right now. So going to keep moving along in the physical certification. So I feel like that would be something that would be wonderful for physical therapists to look at some workshops and other certifications to put more in your toolkit, so that when someone like our friend who had brain cancer, how could we be creative with him in his apartment to get him moving? Well, there was a crawling technique. I called it the army crawl. And it was something he loved to do to get moving along the floor. And then we could get him standing at the sofa. I mean, there were just so many ways to get him moving with crawl techniques that I had learned at the Moving Naturally, MoveNat cert. So that I felt like I was equipped to do something that was, extraordinarily important for him.
Yes. And these certs, and especially a lot of the ones that you've been through, for people that aren't familiar with some of these names and terms that we're throwing out, especially Lori, a lot of the things that she is invested in, they're not in terms of fitness and what you think, where, it's like a boot camp, or, you just learn all these random exercises and burn a bunch of calories and get toned and, all this stuff that you see in mainstream fitness. A lot of what she does is focus on the art of movement. And whether it's with kettlebells, whether it's MoveNat, whether it's with barbells, a lot of these things are really focused on your awareness of your body, how you're moving it, and how to handle different situations, whether it's body positions or whether it's weight. And so it's so much more than what most people think of as kind of mainstream fitness. And that's where I think a PT, any PT, regardless of the setting, could gain a ton from this stuff. But I'd like to ask you, Lori, what would be a good starter kind of introduction workshop to go to as a physical therapist?
I think that the HKC, the Hardstyle Kettlebell Certification, which is a one-day course, as you know, that teaches all variations of the squat, the kettlebell, using a kettlebell, the swing, variations of the swing, and the Turkish get-up, how to do it, how to teach it, how to incorporate mobility along with those movements. Yeah. I think it's very accessible to medical professionals. There's not a lot of physical preparation required for that. And they're all over the country. So I feel like you would come out of there with a lot of new ideas, new ways to use the kettlebell tool with your clients. Did you feel that way when you took it?
Yes, definitely. When I took it in October of 2014, I believe, and I was full-time home health PT, and I took that one-day cert, and on Monday, I was using a lot of those things. Granted, I had to scale it appropriately for my population. But even in home health, I could use a lot of the principles with the squat, with the get up, and not. I mean, I didn't swing with anyone, but I definitely did some deadlift variations, and still do to this day. But yeah, I agree. It sounds so simple. Those 3 fundamental movements are, I mean, honestly, they may be all you need in terms.
I truly believe people. Yeah, absolutely. And then all the mobility that goes along with it that we use. So the arm bars and other variations of the squat, positioning, foot positioning, squatting to a chair, squatting, I mean, a lot of it. I think that's when you started using it in your home health practice, didn't you?
Yeah.
After that?
Yeah. Yeah. And so the HKC is through Dragon Door, which is an awesome, fitness education, company that provides these certifications, the HKC, then the RKC, which is a Russian kettlebell certification. They have 2 levels for that. They also have the PCC.
Yes.
Could you just kind of go through all the different certs that they provide?
Sure. So the HKC is the 1-day entry level that covers the 3 movements plus all the related movements. And the RKC Russian kettlebell certification is a more intense 3-day certification where we have 6 key movements that you have to perform with a required weight based on your age and body weight, and with technical expertise, and then an endurance test, which is 100 kettlebell snatches in 5 minutes. Again, the weight is prescribed per your age and body weight. Yeah. So more intense, more physical preparation required, but boy, a heck of a lot of material. We're teaching you a whole system of strength over those 3 days. So very also would be fantastic for physical therapists to do if they have the desire to make that commitment to prepare for, well, I don't know how long you prepared. They should take 4 to 6 months. Dustin was on the accelerated program.
Yeah. I
course,
regret that.
You're a youngin', so you can do that.
I paid the price.
And then we have the PCC, the Progressive Calisthenics Certification, which is body weight work taught by Al and Danny Cavadlo. So also a great course because they start from the very beginning with, again, squatting, planking, push-ups, inversions, hangs, into climbing, to skin the cat, to muscle ups, from the very, very beginner moves, how to advance someone, all the way through to the very advanced. All fitness levels welcome. There is a small test at the end, physical test, but it's very doable. So excellent course. I would highly recommend it. There's also a 1-day version of it called the SCC. So for someone, perhaps physical therapist, that might be, time-wise, a better option in terms of a 1-day cert versus a 3-day cert.
Yeah. Okay. And, for PTs listening, or, OTs or speech therapists as well, you're not necessarily going to get continuing education credits. You could apply for them, definitely. But for me, just speaking from my experience, because I've done the HKC and the RKC level 1, it is so worth it because yes, there's some pretty intense activities, but you can use them with your patients. But you learn just as much during that 3-day cert as you do in the preparation for these events, and in terms of your own body's limits and how your certain dysfunctions lead to certain issues, and just how that works, because it's very different to read these things in a book versus actually experience them. For me, it's ankle dorsiflexion. My gosh, I didn't realize how big of a problem my stiff ankles are until I started to really get after it for for the RKC training. So it's just an all around amazing experience, and it's very, very different from the typical PT continuing education course, because a lot of times these courses, whether it's a whole weekend or just a day, a lot of it's just a lecture. And you may get your hands on someone, you may get to practice techniques, but what I love about these fitness certifications, especially with Dragon Door, is you got to earn it. When someone has that RKC after their name, that they've been through the ringer and they've come out on the other end. and deserve those letters. So it's completely different from what, we're used to in the rehab world. And yeah, highly encourage people to check it out for sure. So let's shift gears a little bit. I'd like to know what's your game plan as you age in terms of staying as strong and healthy as possible. And let's say, kind of into the 70s, 80s range. What do you think your fitness routine will look like?
That's a great question. I think that it will take a lot of adapting.
Yeah.
I'm not going to stop moving and I'm not going to stop lifting, but as we age, we really have to be careful not to overtrain. For someone like myself who loves to train, and I will do it 5 or 6 days a week now.
Yeah.
Keeping that mobility as, at least 50% or more of my training, doing some movement. In fact, tomorrow I'm probably going to do all movement, not pick up a kettlebell, incorporating more and more mobility and flexibility work so that the range of motion is there and to prevent injury. I find the more mobility work we do, the less we have the little tweaks that pop up, little aches and pains, over soreness. So I think, lifting lighter, I'm okay with that. As long as I can keep moving and stay active and enjoy life. I mean, I'm training and my folks are training to be great in our lives, to be productive and happy and healthy and serve others and enjoy our kids, grandkids, all of our family and friends as much as we can. So we're not, for us, we don't have to protect our country or save lives, right? We're doing this to be good, happy, productive people. And so we don't have to overdo it. So I don't feel a lot of pressure. I'm not concerned. I know I'll still be active, if I'm blessed with good health overall. Yeah. In my 70s, 80s, there's no reason to stop moving. There really isn't. I mean, I've seen folks in their 80s do calisthenics, do, levers. I've seen 80-year-olds do barbell work. I mean, the nice thing is, right, if I can't snatch, overhead with a barbell, I can use a dowel rod. I can use a 15-pound training bar. I mean, there's always an option. There's always a way to adapt. It doesn't have to be heavy weight because if I go back to my training, it's about the movement. It's about moving. And the Olympic lifts, that's why I wanted to get certified in the Olympic lifts because they're just so beautiful. And mobility is a huge priority for those athletes as well. And I learned a lot about mobility from them. And just being able to do those lifts, even if it's with, a 15-pound bar, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Your husband is not, though.
No, he's not. He will never do a clean with a training bar.
Oh, I love him.
Or a snatch.
I love him. So let's go back to your days as a marketer. A lot of desk work, I imagine. And were you spending? How many hours a day were you spending at a desk, you think?
Oh my gosh, like too many, because 8 or 9 probably or more, because I started doing some social media work for people, and that was sitting in the evenings. It wasn't an 8 to 5. I might log in at 9 or 10 at night to check on their Facebook, Twitter. So it could have been sometimes 10 or 11 hours of sitting. And my husband had an intervention. This was before I was doing this professionally. He said, you need to get moving. You're online all the time. This was many, many years back, but that was the beginning of my fitness journey, was him saying, you used to be an athlete, you used to be so active and you're miserable. You're doing all this desk work and you're sitting and you're online on the computer. Wow. This isn't healthy. He tells the story, as you can imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very well. So, and that's when I found, our good friend and Jeff Turner, and Al and I started training with him and learning about functional movement. And was the beginning of my journey to this new career that I'm in, or I've been in now actually for 5 years.
Wow. So let's say if you didn't quit, what would you do differently in terms of kind of offsetting some of that sitting? What would your day look like knowing what you know now?
You mean in my job now? Or?
Yes, if you were doing your job still and knowing what you know now, what would your day look like in terms of the activity or things that you would intentionally do to stay healthy?
Well, I would wake up in the morning. If I had to go to an office to do what I did before, I'd wake up in the morning and do my 5 or 10 minutes of stretching, 5-minute flow, have a good breakfast, go off to the office. I would have a stand-up desk. I would be barefoot. I'd be in my barefoot shoes.
Yes.
More socially acceptable. And then I'd set my alarm on my computer to go for a walk every 30 minutes or so. Or move. Well, I actually used to do this when I was in marketing. I do squats and push-ups and things at my desk. Kettlebell. I had a kettlebell. I do some swings. So I would do some movement every 30 minutes or so. And make sure I got outside at lunchtime as much as I could.
Yeah.
And, just try to stay active throughout the day, try to keep moving. And then in the evenings, stretch if I'm watching some TV with my husband. We really enjoy watching baseball and sports and stretching. And that's what I do now, stretching on the floor.
Yeah. You
can always watch TV and do a Turkish get-up at the same time. I've even done it with a glass of wine sitting next to me. Oh, my gosh.
That's impressive.
Not at the same time.
Okay. Where you didn't balance the glass of wine on your fist as you were doing the...
It's tempting, but no.
And I ask you that question because I know for me, and probably a lot of people listening, we spend a lot of time, we can spend a lot of time sitting, documenting. For me, it's a lot of driving. And so just it's almost inevitable for me. I just do lots of sitting with driving, but it's like, what can I do to offset that? And I think something that you've mentioned to me before is just the concept of kind of movement snacks. Of it doesn't have to be an hour all at once in the morning and just get after it and then you're good for the day, but that you can get great results just by just even if it's just a few squats or get ups or just some movement sprinkled in throughout your day, that has a big impact.
Actually, I think that's even more optimal than having that one workout in the morning and then not doing anything like that the rest of the day. I mean, I think we probably wouldn't have to train the way we train if we were able to work it in more organically throughout our day.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to ask you some quick questions. Your responses don't have to be quick. We'll wrap things up here.
Okay.
What would you tell your 25-year-old self?
Oh. Be a fitness professional now. Don't wait till you're 49.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. What are some of your favorite pieces of technology or apps that make your current job a little bit easier?
Well, I couldn't live without Zen Planner, which is the software I use to run my gym.
Yeah. Okay. And let's say you have every geriatric rehab clinician, people like me, in one room. What would you want them to know?
Oh, wow. I would want them to know that the interaction that they have with their patient could be life-changing. And to never forget that there could be something that they say or do in the therapy session that really changes that person's life and the way they look at movement in their body forever and ever. I think we all have that possibility before us.
Yes. That's a good point, and it's very easy to forget, especially in certain settings, just interacting with so many different people. But yeah, it's you never know. You never know just the words that you say, the impact that they can make. And I think that's pretty appropriate considering your gym is MoveStrong Kettlebells, life-changing fitness is your slogan. So that's awesome. Well, thank you, Lori, for your time and just sharing your story and your experience with me and everyone else. I just really appreciate you. And you've taught me a ton. I've learned, so much from you that you will probably ever know. I mean, most of my sessions with my home health patients resemble more of a MoveStrong kettlebell class than a physical therapy session.
Oh,
honestly.
that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm not yanking your chain. That's the truth. So if people have questions for you or want to check out more of your work, where could they find you on the internet?
They can find me at MoveStrong KBS, K as in kettlebell, B as in boy, S as in Sam.com. And yeah, from there you can find me.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to go ahead and say Lori's YouTube channel, which I don't know if you want people to know about your YouTube channel.
Sure.
But I'm going to go ahead and say it. It is, from what I can tell, the most reliable YouTube channel on learning hardstyle kettlebell movements. You know, she doesn't necessarily, you know, break things down or talk about the movements, but it's just a very clear, simple demonstration of the different movements. So if someone does want to get into kettlebells, first off, get a coach, get someone that's actually certified. You know, Dragon Door has a directory on there. But if you're wanting to just see some of what these moves look like, the swings, the Turkish get-ups, you know, the squats, all these different things that we're talking about. If you search YouTube, MoveStrong KBS, her channel will pop up, and it's gold. So
thank you, Dust. I appreciate that.
It's good stuff. So thank you, Lori. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much.
Before we go, I wanted to share just a little clip of our conversation after we stopped the interview. She talks about one of her current gym members and just kind of you know, what she's doing with this individual. And this individual may not be too different from a lot of patients that we see. I know you'll enjoy this.
As you age, you need to keep active so that so you're not fragile. Sarcopenia is a big issue.
Yeah. So
I had a study where they had studied men and women over a period of time and had shown their VO2 and all of these with HIIT training. They did low intensity training for 6 months, and then they did high intensity for 6 months. And the difference, you know, both were great, but the difference in the high intensity was significant. So, I mean, I really pushed my secondhand smokers and my former smokers and my 60-somethings to get their heart rate up, because they're not going to go out and run. They're not going to get that, and you know, that cardiovascular work any other way. So, I mean, we can do more. I think the bottom line is that older adults, if they have the desire and determination, they can do a hell of a lot. Because I decided, I didn't mention to you, I have a 61-year-old post bypass surgery. Patient guy, and he was in November. It was in November that he had it, so he just started in January, and he is, oh my gosh, like, he is doing great.
How did you get the doctor to sign off on that?
Well, I actually had to call the surgeon, you know, call his cardiologist, talk. He cleared us for 10 pounds, you know, and because I mean, November to January is not very long. Yeah. So, you know, Steve was good. He lifted 10 pounds. That's all he used for, you know, the first month. And then February 15th, we were cleared to go to 20 pounds. And then as of March 1, he was cleared for whatever, you know, felt good. So today, I took a picture of him today. He deadlifted a 70-pound. I should give you the picture. It's just awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And his issues, you know, posture, just no proprioception. No, he'd watched some bad kettlebell DVDs. And so he initially was really fighting me on the technique. And so it was opposite of everything we do. So it was really, I thought, I don't know if this is going to work, you know, because he doesn't, I don't know if he's respecting me, because he has this DVD from this famous kettlebell guy who's not a RKC or an SFG. And I'm like, I don't know. But I think we turned the corner. And like today, when he deadlifted the 70, I just wanted to cry. I was so happy. He did it so beautifully with his chest open and his, you know, good posture and strength.
That's amazing.
Tension. And so I'm like, you know, if people have the desire and they have the motivation for moderation and consistency, and consistency being key for him, especially right now, they can do anything. I honestly think there's really no limits. And we really should be studying this population. We should take these 60-something and study them from now through into their 80s. Yeah. Because they're just remarkable.
Yeah. There's, Christina Novak. She's up in Canada, and she's affiliated with a CrossFit box. She actually just started her PhD on this topic, and she does kind of a boomer class. And yeah, I had a conversation with her, and she's going to do some awesome work. So yeah, that's exciting.
That's great,
That's so cool that, it's just there's so much fear associated with it too, like, oh my gosh, he had a bypass surgery and, this X pound limit, which, I'm not even sure if that's been researched.
It's not. It was purely arbitrary from what I could tell from the physician, because, and Steve and I didn't want to even honor it, but I thought, well, I need to see how he moves. It gave me a chance to see how he was moving, which wasn't good because he had not been using a DVD that had sound technique. So I don't know, but I felt like this has been really important for him. Really important. Like it's just like I can't even believe, it's so excited about it. I can't wait to watch where he goes from here a year from now.
Hit me. Thank you for listening to the Senior Rehab Podcast. The show notes for this episode and much, much more can be found at seniorrehabproject.com. If you found value in this conversation, please share this with one other person that could benefit. And until next time, do not forget to stay funky.